Well, hello, Andrew here again. You may have noticed I keep getting the numbers wrong. I have the last couple of episodes, and by my reckoning today should be 141. And today we're reprising the text from yesterday, but we're looking at some other aspects. I've entitled it On Eunuchs and Virgins. So if you're sensitive, perhaps you might want to skip this one. We're looking at Matthew chapter 19, verses 3 through to 12. Some Pharisees came and tested Jesus, and in this they asked, "Is it lawful for a man to divorce his wife for any cause?" He answered, "Have you not read that the one who made them at the beginning made them male and female, and said, 'For this reason a man shall leave his father and mother and be joined to his wife, and the two shall become one flesh'? So they are no longer two, but one flesh. Therefore what God has joined together, let no one separate." They said to him, "Why then did Moses command us to give a certificate of dismissal and to divorce her?" He said, "It was because you were so hard-hearted that Moses allowed you to divorce your wives. But from the beginning it was not so. And I say to you, whoever divorces his wife except for unchastity and marries another commits adultery." His disciples said to him, "If such is the case of a man with his wife, it is better not to marry." But he said to them, "Let everyone who can accept this teaching, but only those to whom it is given. For there are eunuchs who have been so from birth, and there are eunuchs who have been made eunuchs by others, and there are eunuchs who have made themselves eunuchs for the sake of the kingdom of heaven. Let everyone accept this who can." The way that Jesus responds to the disciples about the difficulties of marriage and the possibility that not getting married is a live option strikes me as a little bit peculiar. Jesus riffs into a discussion on eunuchs, which is an interesting way of addressing the issue. The closest parallel, to me anyway, seems to be in 1 Corinthians 7, where Paul references the difficulties of the age. That is, the inference that the church is either living under persecution or that the return of Jesus is imminent, as reasons why people would defer and not get married. Paul therefore suggests that remaining unmarried is a very good option in these circumstances. Hence, he here uses the word virgin interspersed with unmarried. Both eunuchs and virgins have strong sexual connotations. A eunuch being one who has been castrated or emasculated and is no longer capable of genital sexual activity, and a virgin is one who is not engaged in such activity. Clearly, sexual intimacy has always been regarded as a central aspect of marriage. The one flesh reference of Jesus back to the Genesis account implies this. For many of us, it's hard to imagine marriage without it. Yet I'm aware that many continue to thrive in loving, non-sexual relationships when the capacity for such intimacy has either passed or no longer seems relevant or desirable. Marriage is about more than just sex. And we may be tempted to imagine that the obsession with sex is a modern phenomenon. I think it's clear as we read both what Jesus and Paul are saying, and we'll look briefly at Paul's words in a moment, that this is not the case. The sexual connection is important. It establishes an intimacy that nothing else can. I think it brings with it a vulnerability, an open exposure of one to the other. The biblical sense of knowing, to truly know someone, is applied to this kind of connection. It's a word that we see appear continually through the Old Testament. So-and-so knew. This was certainly in the Old King James Version. So-and-so knew his wife. And it has this deep sense of intimate connectedness that is more than just about a sex act. It's clear also that sex is not simply for procreation, for the continuation of the species, as many Christians have and continue to think. So many are afraid of sex, having consigned it to the category of dirty or carnal or unholy, and secretly fear that it may be wrong or illicit. We're embarrassed that we engage in it at all. Some are, and are ashamed of the enjoyment that we derive from it. Horrors. Yet, we got here because someone's before us engaged in it, and hopefully they enjoyed the process. Jesus' discussion on eunuchs is more properly addressing the issue of celibacy. For some, there is no sexual impulse. I've met such people who are perfectly happy with life uncomplicated by the inevitable tension that sexual energy injects into it. And there are those who have found themselves through circumstances deprived of the opportunity for such intimacy. They may have chosen otherwise, and I know a good number of these as well, who would have chosen otherwise if they had the option. And then there are those who have chosen celibacy as a preferred way of life. Now, until a few years ago, this was something that I struggled to understand. More of that in a moment. Paul, in his discourse in 1 Corinthians 7, is very frank in his instructions. 1 Corinthians 7:1, he says, "Now, for the matters you wrote about," now clearly they wanted some answers because this was a live and hot issue for them. "It is good," says Paul, "for a man not to have sexual relations with a woman. But since sexual immorality is occurring, every man should have sexual relations with his own wife, and each woman with her own husband. The husband should fulfill his marital duty to his wife, and likewise the wife to her husband. The wife does not have authority over her own body, but yields it to her husband. In the same way, the husband does not have authority over his own body, but yields it to his wife. Do not deprive each other, except perhaps by mutual consent and for a time, so that you may devote yourselves to prayer. Then come together again, so that Satan will not tempt you because of your lack of self-control." I say this as a concession, not as a command. I wish that all of you were as I am. But each of you has your own gift from God. One has this gift, one has that. Each is a gift from God. Isn't that great? Oh, I think it's great. And Paul's, as I say, he's quite open and quite frank about the whole issue of the sexual tension that exists within marriages. It seems to me that they tended to talk about such matters much more openly than we tend to, certainly within the evangelical church. I hope you're not too embarrassed about my talking about it like this. It was when I made the spiritual exercises of Ignatius of Loyola as a retreat in daily life over almost a year that I came to understand the draw of celibacy. Why it would be that Catholics, in this case, Catholic religious, would actually choose a life of celibacy. See, the exercises are the basis of Jesuit spiritual formation, and I would commend them to everybody who's watching this. They are very powerful and deeply biblical and experiential, as God, through the exercises, draws us into a deeper intimacy with Himself. I found myself in the place of experiencing so much love for Jesus as I became so aware of His love for me that sex as an activity looked decidedly second best. Now, you may not believe me, but this is true. I could understand why Catholic religious of both genders could willingly make the choice for celibacy. I could imagine them thinking, why would I want to engage in that? With all its complications, wonderful though it may be, when I have this. Seriously. It's clear to me that there's a strong element in this that Paul was pointing to. I do not believe he could have written the words that I read out from 1 Corinthians 7 if he had been asexual, if it had been totally irrelevant to him, with no sexual feeling at all. But this, his chosen celibacy, was the result of an intimacy with God which crowded out the need for a sexual relationship. And this points to something deeper about marriage itself. While sexual intimacy is often the glue that holds it together, it's also an invitation into a deeper level of intimacy and oneness, something that is prefigured in the original conception of the two being one, which is in the end more spiritual than it is sexual or physical. Anyway, just a few thoughts for today. God bless you.